I woke up to the sound of dripping. Slow, steady, like a clock that didn't care whether I was ready for what it was counting down to. Concrete pressed cold against my cheek. My wrists burned, ropes, rough and tight behind my back. A heavy burlap bag covered my head, trapping the smell of old dust, rust, and stale cigarettes. I tried to breathe through my nose and tasted mold. My heart was sprinting, but the room around me felt calm, almost patient, as if it had done this before. Somewhere close, a chair scraped, a lighter clicked. Smoke curled under the bag and crawled into my throat. Then a man spoke. Low, hoarse, familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. "Evelyn, don't force me." That voice wasn't a stranger's. That voice belonged to my father, Richard Hale. The Richard Hale, who smiled for cameras at charity galas and shook hands like a saint. The Richard Hale who'd once told me with a straight face that family was the only thing that mattered. The Richard Hale who was now standing in a warehouse with his son tied to a chair. I heard my mother on the phone. Clear, calm, almost amused. "Richard," she said softly, like she was asking if he'd eaten dinner. "Who exactly do you think you're holding?" My father exhaled smoke. "Mason." My ribs tightened. I wanted to shout, to say I was here, to tell her to call the police, to beg her. Anything. But my mouth was dry and my tongue felt too thick. My mother's voice didn't crack. It didn't shake. It didn't plead. It did something worse. It smiled. "Mason is standing next to me," she said. Silence expanded in the warehouse like a wave rolling in before it breaks. My father's breathing changed. "Cute," he said, voice sharpening. "I can hear him breathing." My mother's laugh was small and sweet. "Then listen harder," she replied. "And when you're done, take the bag off and look closely. Ask yourself whose child you're about to kill." My blood turned to ice. What did she mean? Whose child? What did she mean, Mason is standing next to me? Unless she was bluffing. Unless she had a plan. Unless the plan was already finished and I was the last person in the room who didn't know what I was. The dripping continued. The bag itched against my face. My father's footsteps moved closer, and metal whispered, steel sliding free. A knife. I'd heard that sound in movies. In movies, there was music to warn you. Here, there was only the drip, 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 and the question that wouldn't stop pounding behind my eyes. If my mother wasn't scared, what was she certain of? And if she was certain, why did it feel like I was the one about to disappear? It had started weeks earlier with a family dinner that looked warm on the outside and tasted like poison underneath. The Hale house, glass, stone, money, was full of relatives and polite laughter. My father stood at the front like the host of a perfect life. My mother, Evelyn Hart, sat beside him with the gentle expression everyone loved to call grace. People always used that word about her. Grace, patience, class, as if softness automatically meant weakness. Only I knew what lived behind her calm. I'd seen it in the way her eyes could go still, like deep water. I'd seen it in the way she never raised her voice, because she didn't need to. She didn't fight like other people. She waited. Then she moved once, and it was over. That night, my father brought them in like an announcement. A woman first, thin, beautiful, too carefully fragile. Followed by a girl who couldn't have been more than 16. The girl had long dark hair that fell like silk and big wet eyes that looked permanently on the edge of tears. She tucked herself behind my father's shoulder like a frightened rabbit, hands twisting the hem of her sweater as if she didn't know what to do with them. Anyone would have felt sorry for her. That was the point. My father set a hand on her head and spoke in a voice I hadn't heard him use with me in years. "Lily," he murmured. "It's okay. Daddy's here." The girl glanced toward my mother and me. Quick, cautious, like we were dangerous animals. I almost laughed at the performance. But then, for half a second, the mask slipped. Her eyes sharpened. Not scared. Measuring. Cold. And the corner of her mouth lifted. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Enough for me. My father turned to my mother as if he was delivering bad news about the weather. "Evelyn," he said, "I was wrong. I know I was wrong, but Lily's mom is sick. She can't take care of her. I had to bring her here. Please don't make this harder. My mother lowered her gaze. She didn't answer immediately. The silence made my father's relatives uncomfortable. So his aunt, Marjorie Hale, who lived on other people's money and loved the sound of her own authority, jumped in, clapping her hands like this was a blessing. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she chirped. "Everybody knows Richard never truly got over his first love. But his heart is still here with you, Evelyn. This sweet girl is only staying temporarily. Don't be so strict." I watched Aunt Marjorie's face glow with the pleasure of being involved. The same woman who'd screamed and raged when my father married my mother, furious that Evelyn's family had the kind of power the Hales didn't. Now she acted like she had the right to decide who belonged in our home. My mother finally looked up. She smiled, warm, polite, harmless. "Of course," she said. "I won't hold it against a child." My father's shoulders relaxed. Aunt Marjorie beamed. Lily blinked with practiced gratitude. The room exhaled, believing the danger had passed. I didn't exhale, because I knew that smile. That was the smile my mother wore when she'd already chosen where to place the blade. And the blade, I realized, wasn't going toward Lily. It was going toward my father. The first strike came the next day, served in a way that made it look like the victim deserved it. I came downstairs to the sound of porcelain breaking. A cup shattered across the tile. Lily sat on the floor clutching her forearm, sobbing as if her heart had been ripped out. My father was already there. Of course he was, towering over me with fury loaded in his posture. "Mason," he snapped. "What did you do?" Lily hiccuped through tears. "It's okay, Dad," she whispered. "He didn't mean to. I stepped in the wrong place." She held her arm out, skin red and angry, like she'd been burned. My father's eyes narrowed on the mark. "An entire cup of hot water doesn't just happen," he growled. Then he turned that anger on me, as if the story had already been written. "Apologize to your sister." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "She's not my sister," I said. "And I didn't do anything." She walked into it. My father's hand lifted. For a second, I thought he was going to hit me. The air felt electric. Then my mother stepped in, smooth as silk. She caught his wrist gently, like a wife calming an embarrassed husband. "Richard," she said softly, "Mason can be stubborn. You know that." She looked down at Lily's arm with a gasp that sounded perfectly sincere. "Oh my God," she said. "That looks painful." "Lily, sweetheart, I'm sorry. I'll apologize on Mason's behalf." Lily's lips trembled, eyes wide. Innocent, wounded, virtuous. My father's shoulders eased again, satisfied that my mother had handled me. I met my mother's gaze for the briefest moment. Her smile stayed sweet. Her eyes were winter. The next morning, a cup of boiling water accidentally fell from the upstairs landing. It missed me by inches. It landed on my father's arm. The scream that tore out of him didn't sound like the man who ran companies. It sounded like an animal. He clutched his forearm, skin blistering, face contorting with shock. Lily rushed forward in a panic, swearing she hadn't done it. My mother made a sound of heartbreak. "Lily," she said, voice trembling with sorrow, "I know yesterday was hard, but I apologize to you. Why would you throw boiling water at Mason?" Lily froze. Then she realized what my mother was doing and tried to fight it carefully because she couldn't break character. "I didn't," she cried. "I swear. I don't know what happened." My mother tilted her head, eyes filled with disappointed compassion. "Then explain," she said softly. "Why the cup came from upstairs when only you were upstairs." Lily's jaw tightened. Under my father's gaze, she couldn't explode. She had to stay small. She had to stay sweet. And my mother had just placed a collar around her neck and yanked, without raising her voice once. That should have been enough to scare Lily into behaving. But people like Lily don't behave when they lose. They adapt. They hunt for a better angle. My mother didn't wait for that. She set a trap so clean it looked like kindness. That night, she slid an arm around my shoulders as we walked through the hall. Mason, she said warmly, you've never had siblings. You're learning. It's hard. So I've decided to bring you someone who can help. I frowned. Who? A door opened. Our housekeeper stood aside, and a boy about my age stepped into the light. Tall, athletic, clean-cut in a way that didn't feel expensive, just disciplined. He had sharp eyes and a calm smile that didn't reach them. He extended a hand toward me. Hey, he said. I'm Noah. My father appeared behind us, face darkening instantly. Evelyn, he demanded. Who is that? My mother's smile widened. This is Noah Cole, she said brightly. Mason's older brother. The room went dead. My father's face cycled through anger, confusion, disbelief. What did you just say? He snapped. My mother blinked, wide-eyed like she couldn't imagine why he'd be upset. You brought Lily home, she said gently. You said you were giving a child a roof. I'm doing the same. 3 kids under one roof. Isn't that what family is? My father's fists clenched. Who is his father? He demanded. My mother's smile didn't move. You'll find out, she said sweetly. Eventually. And my father, who just forced a child into our home and called it necessary, had no argument he could say out loud without exposing himself. Noah moved in. Quietly. Too quietly. He didn't argue. He didn't posture. He simply appeared wherever Lily tried to corner me. If I raised my voice, he was there. If Lily smiled too sweetly, Noah's eyes shifted too. Her like a warning. Lily hated him immediately. She couldn't outplay him because he wasn't playing for applause. He played like someone who wanted the board, not the moment. Lily tried anyway. She chose my birthday party, the one night when people were watching, and my father's side of the family was eager to judge my mother, to set the stage. The house was full of guests, including my classmates from Ravenwood Prep and my father's relatives, all dressed up and ready to measure worth with their eyes. Lily wore white, minimal makeup, hair glossy, a picture of humble innocence beside my tailored suit and polished shoes. Aunt Marjorie practically paraded her around. This is Richard's younger daughter, she told everyone loudly. So smart, so sweet, such a good girl. Then Lily looked down, voice trembling, and said she couldn't show her awards because someone had destroyed them. The room leaned in like it was watching a show. My certificates, my ribbons, Lily whispered. They were ripped up. Someone drew on them with lipstick. She hesitated, then pulled out a lipstick tube from her purse with shaking fingers and held it toward me. I found this in my room, she said, barely above a whisper. I'm returning it to you, Mason. The tube was mine. Custom. My initials engraved. People's faces shifted instantly because a physical object is more convincing than any truth. My classmates started murmuring. Someone said, careful but cutting, Mason, even if she's, even if she's not your mom's, that's kind of cruel. Aunt Marjorie stepped in with relish. Jealousy is ugly, she scolded me loudly. My father didn't say a word. He just placed a steadying hand on Lily's shoulder like she was the one being attacked. Lily's eyes flicked up at me, glittering. She thought she'd won. She thought the room belonged to her now. I stared at the lipstick. Then I smiled. That's strange, I said lightly, because I don't remember going into your room at all. I turned my head toward Noah. Noah, I added, did you ever find my lipstick? The one I lost. Noah met my eyes like we were sharing a private joke. I looked, he said calmly. Couldn't find it anywhere. Lily's smile faltered for half a second, then recovered. It was in my room, she insisted, voice shaking with righteous hurt. Why would I ruin my own awards? Noah's mouth curved into something that wasn't kindness. I don't know, he said. That's why I installed cameras. The room snapped into a sharper silence. My father's head whipped toward him. What did you do? Noah didn't flinch. He pulled out his phone, tapped, and held the screen up. The footage was clear. Lily creeping into my room, opening my drawer, taking the lipstick, slipping away. Lily went white, not pale white, like the blood had fled her entirely. The room erupted. Whispers turned to open judgment. My friend from school laughed harshly. So you stole his lipstick to frame him, and then drew on your own stuff? Aunt Marjorie tried to speak, but my mother's voice cut in softly from behind them. Lily is such a good girl, my mother said with gentle confusion. Why would she ever do something like that? Unless someone put her up to it? Aunt Marjorie's mouth shut like a slammed door. Lily's eyes flashed with panic and hatred, but she couldn't scream. She couldn't run, because her whole power was built on the idea that she was helpless. And helpless girls can't throw tantrums when the mask breaks. That night, Lily didn't get revenge. She got backup. Her mother arrived like a storm wrapped in perfume. Serafina Quinn, Sarah, stepped into our home in heels and tears, collapsing into my father's arms as if she'd been waiting there her whole life. She was beautiful in a way that looked expensive but carefully fragile. She sobbed loudly enough for the house to hear. You promised, she cried. You promised you'd take care of our daughter. Now she's being bullied in your own house. My father's voice softened in a way that made my stomach twist. Sarah, he murmured, you're not well. Don't get worked up. My mother stood a few feet away, silent, watching. I watched my father ignore her completely as if she was furniture. Then he said the thing that finally proved what he was willing to do. I've had a room prepared, he told Sarah gently. Move in today. You can take care of Lily yourself. My mother didn't move. She didn't protest. She didn't plead. The house breathed. In waiting for her to break. She didn't. She just smiled. Soft, polite, and turned away. Everyone assumed that meant surrender. I knew better. My mother only ever went quiet when she was counting. Sarah settled into our home and made sure my mother felt it. She coughed once, and my father ran to her side. She pressed a hand to her chest dramatically, and my father called doctors. They found nothing. My father treated her anyway, carrying soup and medicine like a man performing repentance. Meanwhile, my mother actually got sick, fever, dizziness, pale lips, exhaustion that made her hands tremble. My father didn't come to her room once. It was me and Noah who brought her water, who changed her compresses, who sat in the dim light listening to her breathe. I asked her one night, voice raw, Mom, does it not hurt? She stroked my hair. Not the way they think, she whispered. Her eyes looked past me, into something far and deep. Pain is useful, she said quietly, if you know what to do with it. Then, behind closed doors, my father made his real move. He took my mother outside into the garden, under the soft lights that made everything look prettier than it was, and he spoke like a businessman negotiating a merger. He told her he had regrets. He told her he had obligations. He told her she was the one who'd benefited too. Then he asked her to sign a document, an asset transfer. A handful of small companies, he claimed, just enough to make Sarah leave peacefully. My mother listened. Then she signed. My father walked away relieved, convinced he'd won. Sarah and Lily moved out a few days later. The house felt quiet again, almost normal. My father smiled more. He slept better. He thought the problem had been solved with ink. Then, at a corporate event packed with investors and rivals, my father found my mother laughing with a partner from Hartwell Capital. Her company, her legacy, and Richard Hale's face darkened in public. He grabbed her arm hard enough to leave a mark and hissed. The document was fake. You played me. My mother blinked. Did I? She asked gently. The transfer has no legal effect. He snarled. You swapped the pages. My mother tilted her head. That would be terrible, she said mildly, as if he'd told her the waiter forgot the bread. My father's lips curled. It was only a few small companies, he said. Why not give them to her? My mother's eyes cooled. Small? She repeated. They were my early-stage ventures. My groundwork. My future. You don't get to hand my life to your mistress and call it mercy. That was when Sarah burst into the ballroom, wailing like the world was ending. She pointed at my mother and screamed that Evelyn Hart had stolen Richard from her. Years ago, that Evelyn had forced him into marriage. That Evelyn was a snake who used money to steal love. Lily clung to her mother, crying prettily, looking at the crowd like they were her jury. People stared. Whispers spread. Some laughed, delighted to see a powerful woman humiliated. My father stood there letting it happen, letting my mother be painted as the villain so he could walk away. Clean. My mother dabbed her eyes. I signed what he asked, she said softly, voice trembling just enough to sound believable. I was willing to give it. I don't know why the paperwork went wrong. My father stepped forward to attack her again. Then someone stepped between them. A man in a tailored suit and gold-rimmed glasses, calm as a judge. Adrian Cole, my father's most trusted executive. Secretary. The man who'd handled Richard Hale's contracts, secrets, and quiet moves for years. Adrian smiled politely at my father. Mr. Hale, he said. My father's jaw tightened. Adrian, he snapped. Move. Adrian didn't. He shifted slightly, placing his body like a shield in front of my mother. The crowd noticed. Everyone noticed. My mother leaned out from behind him, eyes bright with amusement. Adrian, she said warmly. Long time. Then she asked the question like she was tossing a match into gasoline. Richard says the document was tampered with, she said. Would you know why? Sarah's crying stopped mid-sob. Her eyes went wide. Because if Richard had planned anything, Adrian would have known. And if Adrian was standing with Evelyn, then Richard wasn't the hunter anymore. He was prey. I stepped forward, smiling innocently. Mr. Cole, I said, voice clear. Noah wanted to say hello, but he couldn't make it tonight. He said he misses you. The sentence was harmless on the surface. Underneath, it detonated. People looked from Adrian to Noah, who was standing near me, expression unreadable, and then back to my mother. Connections sparked. Behind their eyes, my father's face turned the color of spoiled milk. He stared at Adrian as if he was seeing a ghost wearing a familiar suit. Cole, my father whispered. Noah Cole. And suddenly, Richard Hale understood that my mother hadn't brought a boy into the house. She'd brought a message. She'd brought leverage. She'd brought the hand that had been holding Richard's throat for years and made him realize it. After that, my father tried to repair what he'd broken with gifts and performance. He bought supplements and cooked soup and tried to care again. He didn't even remember my mother was violently allergic to dates. Adrian did. Adrian arrived with bird's nest soup and set it down gently beside my mother like it was a promise. My father watched from the doorway, face tightening as if he was swallowing nails. Noah wandered in, casual, and greeted Adrian with one word that stabbed my father clean through the chest. Dad. The room didn't move. My father didn't speak. He simply turned and left, shoulders stiff, the illusion collapsing with every step. When the pressure became too much, my father did what desperate men always do. He aimed for the one target he believed my mother couldn't sacrifice. Me. On a dark road outside Ravenwood Prep, a car cut me off. Hands grabbed me, a rag pressed to my face, a smell like chemicals, then black. Now, back in the warehouse. My father paced with the phone to his ear, knife in his hand, the drip 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 counting down. Evelyn, he said, voice breaking into something ugly. You did this. You ruined me. Fix it. Drop the evidence. Give me back my company. Or I swear I'll. My mother interrupted gently. Richard, she said. Do you remember Julian Pierce? My father froze. Even through the bag, I could feel it, the sudden tension, the way a name can change the temperature in a room. Julian Pierce was the man my mother never talked about except when the ocean went quiet in her eyes. The man who died when his car went off a coastal bridge into black water years ago. The man I'd been told was an accident. My father's voice turned sharp. Don't say that name. My mother's voice stayed calm. You threatened his keepsakes. she said softly. So let's talk about how he died. My father's breathing hitched. It was an accident, he snapped. My mother laughed. A small, tender sound. If you say so, she murmured. But the evidence says otherwise. And I'm done playing the wife of a man who crawled into my grief wearing someone else's face. My father's footsteps came closer. The knife glinted in my mind. I heard his voice shift into something hollow, almost pleading. Evelyn, he said. You needed me. You couldn't live without me. I look like him. I was the only thing that kept you from... My mother's tone turned softer, almost pitying. That was your mistake, she said. You thought resemblance was love. You thought my pain made me weak. You didn't realize I was using you the way you were using me. My father's voice cracked. What are you saying? My mother answered like she was closing a file folder. I'm saying you built Hailcrest Holdings with my money and my network, she said. I let you. I watched you climb. I waited until you were tall enough to fall hard. My father made a sound between a laugh and a sob. You can't, he whispered. You won't. My mother's voice cooled into something absolute. Take the bag off, she said. Look. My father's silence stretched. Then his hand grabbed the burlap and yanked. Light exploded into my eyes. I blinked hard, tears spilling. My vision swam. My father stood in front of me. Richard Hale, face gaunt, eyes bloodshot, a man unraveling. The knife hovered in his fist. Behind him, in the dim corner of the warehouse, another chair scraped. Another figure, also bound, also hooded, shifted weakly. My father stared at me, then his head snapped toward the second chair, confusion and fury colliding. What is this? He snarled into the phone. My mother's voice was smooth as velvet. You wanted Mason, she said. You grabbed someone in the dark. That's on you. My father stepped toward the second chair, breathing hard, and ripped the hood off. A girl's face rolled into the light, blood at her hairline, lips pale, eyes half open in terror. Lily Hale. My father's mouth fell open. For a second, he looked like he couldn't understand language anymore. Then his gaze shot back to me, then to Lily, then to the phone, like he was trying to force reality into a shape he could survive. No, he whispered. No. My mother's voice turned almost gentle. You see her now? She asked. The daughter you brought into my house to humiliate me. The daughter you used as a weapon. The daughter you swore you'd protect. My father's hands shook. Evelyn, he rasped. I didn't mean. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, slicing through the night. My father's eyes went wild. He lifted the knife like a man drowning. Lily made a muffled sound through cracked lips, pleading. I tried to lunge, but the ropes held. My father's face twisted into something feral. Rage at losing, rage at being fooled, rage at the truth he couldn't undo. He drove the knife down. Lily's body jerked once, then went slack. The sirens screamed closer. My father stumbled backward, staring at what he'd done as if it had happened to someone else. The warehouse door slammed open. Flashlights cut through. Dust. Police! Voices shouted. Drop the weapon. My father didn't run. He didn't fight. He sank to his knees like the strings holding him up had been cut. He started laughing, high, broken, unrecognizable. Then he started crying. The officers swarmed him, cuffing his wrists, forcing him to stand. He turned his head toward me, eyes wet and furious, and spat the words like they could hurt. My mother from across the miles. Evelyn Hart, he screamed. You're a monster. My mother's voice came through the phone one last time, calm and clear. No, Richard, she said. I'm the woman you tried to bury, and you dug your own grave. They dragged him out. They cut my ropes. Cold air hit my face like a slap. I stumbled, shaking, and the world kept tilting like it couldn't decide which way was up. An officer wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. Another asked my name. I couldn't answer at first because my throat was full of something thick and bitter. When I finally spoke, My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Mason, I managed. The officer nodded, gentle. You're safe now. Safe. The word felt wrong. Safe didn't bring Lily back. Safe didn't erase the image of my father's hands. Safe didn't explain the part that still pulsed in my skull like an untreated wound. My mother had told him Mason was standing beside her, and she'd been telling the truth. Because when I was released at the station hours later, I saw him. Noah stood next to my mother outside, posture relaxed, eyes steady. My mother looked untouched by the chaos, hair neat, coat buttoned, face calm like this had always been scheduled. And beside her, another young man stood. My height, my build, my haircut, wearing my jacket, hands in his pockets, eyes lowered modestly. He looked like me the way reflections look like you, close enough to fool the world, different enough to haunt you. My mother met my gaze, and for the first time I saw something raw flicker behind her. Not regret, not guilt, grief old, deep, controlled. Mason, she said softly, stepping toward me. I'm sorry you had to see the end. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I looked at the double again. Who is that? I finally whispered. My mother's hand touched my cheek, warm and steady. Insurance, she replied. Then she looked past me, toward the dark horizon, and her voice turned. Quiet. And proof, she added, that the man you called Dad was never who he pretended to be. The trial moved fast. The evidence was heavy. Financial crimes, tax fraud, attempted extortion, kidnapping, homicide. Richard Hale went from kingmaker to cautionary tale. Sarah Quinn collapsed publicly, then vanished. Aunt Marjorie tried to stir scandals until Hartwell lawyers shut her down so thoroughly she left the state. Halecrest Holdings was bought out under court pressure and investor panic. Hartwell Capital absorbed what my mother wanted and let the rest rot. People called my mother ruthless. People called her cold. People called her evil. People always needed a villain. My mother never corrected them. She didn't care what they called her. She cared what she kept. Months later, we left Seattle. We moved to the coast, an understated house near gray-blue water, where the sky always looked like it was thinking. The first morning there, my mother walked barefoot across the sand, as if she was touching earth for the first time. She laughed, bright and sudden, like the sound had been locked away for years. Adrian Cole stood behind her, arms around her shoulders, gentle in a way my father had never learned. My mother leaned back into him and whispered, "Thank you." Adrian kissed her temple and answered softly, "No," he said. "Thank you for pulling me out of the wreck I was living in." Noah yelled my name from the porch, tossing me a bottle of water, smirking like he owned the horizon. I threw a handful of sand at him. He yelped, sputtering, and tackled me into the dune. "You little menace," he said, laughing. I shoved him off and rolled away, breathless, the salt wind cold on my face. For a second, I looked back at my mother. She was staring at the ocean, not smiling now, not sad, just still, like she was listening to something under the waves that no one else could hear. I stepped closer, quieter. "Mom," I said softly, "do you still miss him?" She didn't ask who. She didn't need to. "Every day," she whispered. Then she turned her head slightly, eyes softening. "But missing someone doesn't mean you let the wrong person keep punishing you," she added. The wind lifted her hair. The water glinted like glass. And for the first time in my life, I understood what my mother had been all along. Not a saint. Not a victim. Not a woman who endured because she couldn't fight. A woman who endured because she was waiting for the right moment to end the war in one move and walk away clean. And as the waves rolled in, steady as the drip 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 that once counted down my fear, I realized the most terrifying part wasn't what my father had done. It was what my mother had been capable of doing, quietly, patiently, without ever raising her voice, just to make sure we survived.